So it's my pleasure, I'm so excited to welcome Reverend Dr. Jerry Troyer to Joyful Gathering for our annual, because we even have them for next year too.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it going. Yeah, keep offering yourself at those auctions. We win them at the ANTN affiliated New Thought auction. I bid on Jerry every year, so that's why he's here.
But
So
I'd come anyway.
We're all winners. We're all winners. Dr. Jerry is an incredible, you talk about oneness, you talk about heart. That's who this man is. He's one big, gigantic heart filled with love. He's also got many accomplishments. I'm not going to get into them all. But I am going to say he's the board president of our organization that we belong to, ANTN, Affiliated New Thought Network. He is our president. He's a staff minister at Om Center, that's in California, for spiritual living, Om Center for Spiritual Living. And this is so beautiful. We're gonna have to donate to this again. He's also, this is his big heart, the director of relationship development for the Urban Street Angels, that takes in these teenagers who have no place to go and trains them and develops them and gives them food and a place to stay. And I think you're now giving them opportunities for work and all kinds of different ways to function in the world. It's incredible. So it is my honor and great pleasure to welcome Reverend Dr. Jerry Troyer to Joyful Gathering.
Thank you, Reverend Margaret, and good morning, everybody. It's a great joy to be back with you on this glorious fall day. It is so beautiful out there. So thanks for being here with us rather than being out playing football or whatever you'd be doing otherwise.
I don't think so.
Probably not, but you know, whatever. And my great thanks, and I was remembering as we were hearing the announcements earlier, the Joyful Gathering did donate to Urban Street Angels. I was there earlier this year or the end of last year, and we so appreciate that. We have about 140 formerly homeless 18 to 25-year-olds in San Diego that didn't have to sleep on the street last night because of one of our programs. And we just received a grant and are knocking out walls and doing things, and we're going to be adding 20 more beds to our program. So it's pretty amazing, and obviously it's one of the joys of my life. So thank you so much for your love and support on that. So my topic for this morning is the process of forgiveness. When I first found New Thought, and I was thinking about it, and it really has been 30 years, dear Lord. I was in swaddling clothes at the time, so just want to clarify that. But when I first found this teaching, I thought that suddenly everything would change. Life would be wonderful. I'd have money. I'd have wonderful relationships. I'd have perfect health. Everything would just be a walk in the park. And I have to say that things did start to change, and our money, our finances did get better, and our relationships did improve, and my physical health got better. But one thing that didn't change was that people still, and I also thought that somehow, some way, the people in my life would start to behave themselves. And it's probably been right, and it's probably been your experience as it was mine, that people don't always behave themselves. Your life would be so much better if you just do what I want you to do. We wouldn't even have to talk about forgiveness, or not very much anyway, if people would just do what they're supposed to do. But alas, that is not always the case. I need you to follow my rules. And I have a rule about being on time and being early. I have to admit that I got here at 10:15 this morning, which was really late for me, and I was starting to stress out just a little because, and I have never said this before, but I couldn't get an elevator. I'm staying at the Hilton over at Penn's Landing on the 17th floor, and it's absolutely wonderful and such a gorgeous view of the river, but I'm standing for 15 minutes and I couldn't get an elevator. And then we had to go up so we could go down. So I finally got one, but just a little stressed because, dear Lord, you don't want to be late to church if you're the one giving the message. That's right? Yeah, that's really tacky. But I need to be on time, and I need you to be on time. And if you weren't on time this morning, please understand that there is no judgment here. This is just my, and I didn't even notice, but it's my trip, not yours. My father taught us, be early. Be better to be 45 minutes early and sit in the parking lot and listen to the radio than, back in the day when there were radios in our cars, rather than being 5 minutes late. We live, my husband, who many of you know, made his transition almost 4 years ago. He and I lived in the Boston area in 1994 and 95. An amazing experience because I was born in San Diego and lived there all my life except for those 2 years. So got to experience the change of seasons and snow and nor'easters and all those wonderful things. Wonderful things. And my first business trip out of Boston was to Philadelphia to visit a client out in Bluebell. And so it was in February, flew into Philadelphia, got the rental car, I'm headed out the blue route, the 476, and the last exit before you get on the turnpike is Township Line Road. So I need to get off at that exit, but I wasn't looking at my phone because I didn't have one at the time, but something happened and I missed the exit, and of course, the next thing is the turnpike. In California, we don't have turnpikes. You just go down to if you miss your exit, you just go down to the next one and turn around and come back. Well, as you know, turnpikes can be very unforgiving, and so I went for 10 miles and then back. So to make a long story even longer, I was about 45 minutes late to my meeting with a client. First one. I almost needed to be hospitalized. Because, and I don't know about you, but so my mind makes up the stories about, and of course they're not good and positive stories, they're sweet Lord. They're gonna cancel the contract, I'm gonna lose my job, we're gonna be selling matches in the snow to try and make money, you know, blah, 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 blah. So finally got into the meeting, I'm so sorry, and my client said, it's snowing outside, don't worry about it. My rule, my story, not his. I'm convinced that life has a sense of humor because my husband had no such rules. So we get there 10 o'clock-ish, or 10 o'clock, but with not really any time to spare. My new beloved has absolutely no rules. So I will see you at 10 o'clock. 10:15, 10:20, he comes in. So, and I started doing that. Well, what does this mean? You don't respect me, you don't love me, you don't value my time, all that stuff, using a purely spiritual term. What it means is, he gets there a few minutes late. That's all it means. We attach the meaning to whatever happens, which I think is a whole separate Sunday morning talk.
Yes.
Exactly. There is a Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Mm-hmm. So we're still chopping wood and carrying water, but ideally what we find is a different outlook on things and a different way to handle things. My favorite word in the English language is should. I should do that. You should do that. You shouldn't do that. I shouldn't do that. And it's been my experience, and probably yours as well, that If I'm shoulding on myself or shoulding on you, it's probably something that I didn't want to do or that you didn't want to do, but we somehow have that rule about whatever it is. Because our dear ones should live long lives, healthy lives. They should take care of themselves. Our children should have wonderful lives and wonderful relationships. That's how it should be. When it isn't, there's the opportunity to forgive. I came from, and this really was an awareness for me, and if you read my first book, and the second one really is in process, I promise, but if you read my first book, it's kind of the magic wand form of forgiveness. Oh, okay, I forgive you. Have you ever tried that?
Yeah.
Sometimes, I can forgive you for going 30 miles an hour in the left lane when I'm trying to get across the Ben Franklin Bridge because I'm late to church. I can forgive you for that. I can forgive you for whatever it is sometimes, but a lot of times it just takes more than that. Because if we don't allow ourselves to feel what we feel, we get into that toxic positivity and spiritual bypass stuff. And we talked, when I was with you last year, we talked about grief and loss and those human emotions, and rather than, oh well, it's okay, we have to allow ourselves to feel what we feel so we can move forward. So we can, when we're ready, we can forgive. One of my favorite books is Forgiveness and Other Acts of Love by Stephanie Dowrick. She is from either Australia or New Zealand. And I absolutely, I think it's got to be at the top of the list of my very most favorite books. And about forgiveness, she writes, "You may not recognize forgiveness even when you've experienced it, for what we are seeking to know better is subtle, difficult to define, multi-layered, and contains an element of magic. You will, however, feel it in your body. Something, very nearly a thing, has left you. You are no longer carrying the load you were. You have put it down. Anger may have given way to sorrow or regret. Rage may have flattened out into indifference or pity, but into what seemed black and white has crept a little gray." And if you've ever had this experience of carrying something for months or years or decades, and then it just leaves you and you figure out that you've forgiven. It's better than Weight Watchers. It's better than Jenny Craig. It's better than Nutrisystem. It's better than any of those weight loss programs, because it really is almost a physical releasing of what that was. And we'll talk about that this afternoon. Because the magic wand very often doesn't work. And we try, okay, I forgive you. But then, what if our hearts are still broken? What if we're still so angry? As good metaphysicians, we tell ourselves that everything is wonderful and everything is as it should be and everything's in divine order and all of those other things. And yet, it sure doesn't look like it. So, how important it is for us to honor ourselves and to feel those feelings so that we can move forward. Very often, forgiveness comes when we allow ourselves to change our story. And one of my stories is, so my husband died, as I mentioned, almost 4 years ago, and we did an amazing memorial service with about 150 people there. And if you've ever had the experience of a death in your family, you know that people are well-intentioned, but they don't know what to say. We, in Western society, don't handle death well. In fact, we don't even use the D word. They went on to their next experience. They transitioned. All the other words to keep from saying they died, but they did. So we did the memorial service and it was wonderful, and a few days later I was going through the sign-in book, remembering how wonderful it was and gratitude for the people that attended, and then I started thinking, well, but they weren't there, and they weren't there, and they weren't there. What does this mean? Does it mean they don't love me? Does it mean they don't care? Does it mean they didn't love Jerry? My husband was also Jerry. No. What it means is they weren't there. Sometimes in our forgiveness work, there's the opportunity to change our story. Because if we don't judge it, and this is huge for me, if we don't judge it, we don't have to forgive it. But not there yet. Not there yet. With that I was, but there's all sorts of other things, and I bet for you as well. So I'd like to share some ideas with you on what forgiveness is and what forgiveness is not. We'll do a deeper dive this afternoon, and as you probably know, the Eagles, the birds are fighting the birds this afternoon, which is pretty cool. The Eagles are playing the Cardinals in Phoenix, and it doesn't start till 4 o'clock, so you have time to stay with us, then stop at Giant or Acme and get what you need, and go home and get ready for the football game. Forgiveness is a process, not an event. Forgiveness is lovingly releasing the shoulds. You should have done that. I should have done that. A big part of this has to do very often with forgiving ourselves for whatever it is we did or didn't do. A wise person, not me, once said, forgiveness is when you stop wishing for a better yesterday. Forgiveness is the conscious questioning, or must include the conscious questioning of, is this mine to forgive? If what you're holding anger and resentment for didn't directly affect you, is that really yours to forgive? And we'll talk about that this afternoon. Forgiveness probably must include ourselves as well as others, because I somehow, some way was involved in whatever it was that happened. And so as I forgive you, I must forgive myself. Because I don't know about you, you've probably not made any messes in your life, but I've made a few, either by not paying attention or making the wrong choice or whatever, and so there's always the opportunity to finally put the baseball bat down and begin to forgive ourselves as we forgive others. Forgiveness very often comes after the 5 stages of grief, and you might remember the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's writings about the 5 stages, and the last stage is acceptance, and then there's forgiveness. But again, maybe not this afternoon, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not 2 years from now, but we begin to think about the possibility of maybe I could forgive this. True forgiveness is not taking the easy way out. Well, I don't know what to do with this, and so I'll just forgive it. But then something happens, and you see them in the grocery store, or you have a thought about them, or a song that really meant something to you in your relationship with them comes on the radio, for those of us that still have radios. Something happens and we get that anger again and that regret again and those feelings again, and so it reminds us that there's more wonderful work to do. Forgiveness is not an act of martyrdom. I am such a great guy, and so I will go ahead and forgive you. Dolly Parton once said, "Get down off the cross, somebody else needs the wood." This is not about martyrdom. This is giving ourselves the most amazing gift that probably affects the other person not at all, and especially if they're no longer with us. It absolutely does not affect our parents, quite possibly parents and grandparents and departed spouses and children and whoever else. But it has little effect on them, but huge effect on us. Forgiveness is not letting someone else off the hook. And forgiveness is not forgetting. You've heard that, you've probably heard that expression, forgive and forget. Good luck with that. Very often we can't and we shouldn't, because there is some wisdom in that experience. And that we need to remember. So in the forgiving process, ultimately we release the fire, we release the anger and the hurt and all the rest of that, but we keep the wisdom from that experience so that we can allow ourselves to move forward. Do we forgive people who die? When I do a memorial service, I always like to include, there might be some forgiveness work, not only for whatever your relationship was with them when they were alive, but also the mere fact that they left. My husband was 53. He was a nurse, and he didn't take care of himself. If you are a nurse, please take care of yourself. If you live with someone or know someone who is a nurse, you know that they do a wonderful job of taking care of us, but very often not so good at taking care of themselves. So take care of yourself. But also forgive, again, forgiving people who have left us before we were ready for them to go. So this afternoon we're going to talk about forgiveness related to all these wonderful life experiences and decide what we still need to carry with us and what we can lovingly release. So why does it matter? One of my favorite authors, Debbie Ford, once wrote, "What we can't be with won't let us be." If we can't be with that experience, if we can't be with the memories of that person, we're not fully present in the moment. We're not able to express and experience all the good that life has for us if we're still carrying that. And it comes out in surprising and wonderful ways. What happened to the leftover pizza? That was a full pint of Ben & Jerry's. I thought I bought lemon Oreos. Where are the lemon Oreos? That's a private joke at the Anthem conference that I'll tell you about later. Our emotions, being spiritual beings having a human experience, our emotions can sometimes come out in surprising and wonderful ways. Where do we get road rage? From unhealed anger and resentment and regret and the need for forgiveness. Or we can look at it and feel it so we can heal it. So how do we know when we're done? And if you've had the experience, I honor and celebrate you. And if you haven't, I invite you to think about it. And again, one more shameless commercial to come and be with us this afternoon. So how do you know? Do the heavens open and the trumpets sound and the angels appear and you know that you've forgiven? Mary Morrissey says the way that you know is the person can now walk down the streets of your mind and not be attacked. So I can think about them. I can think about that experience. I can think about me and that time that and you get to fill in the blank, and I can think about that and allow it and see that, yes, I would have preferred that, but it brought me to this point. It allowed me to learn whatever it was. And if we're still carrying regret and guilt about something that we did, our affirmative prayer, our spiritual mind treatment very often isn't going to work for us unless we believe we deserve whatever it is. And so if we're still carrying that guilt and that anger toward ourselves, not only are we not necessarily making the best choices for ourselves, but also our relationship with life, lowercase l, and life, uppercase L, is not going to be all that it can be because, again, we're carrying that guilt and shame, and we don't believe we deserve, we may not believe we deserve whatever it is. Course in Miracles says, I can see peace instead of this. And so what forgiveness allows us to do is to see peace. Thank you all.
Oh, thank you.